Andre Malraux, Days of Wrath. Author's preface. The articles devoted to this short novel at the time of its serial publication suggest a number of ideas to which I wish to call attention very briefly, and which I hope to develop more fully on a future occasion. Those who believe my documentation to have been too sketchy are referred to the official regulations governing the concentration camps. I do not define the Nationalist Socialist Party by its concentration camps. What we know of French prisons allows no complacency on that score. But it is the concentration camps that are dealt with here. The world of a work like this, the world of tragedy, is the ancient world still. Man, the crowd, the elements, woman, destiny. It reduces itself to two characters, the hero and his sense of life. Individual antagonisms, which make possible the complexity of the full-length novel, do not figure here. If I had had to give Nazis the importance which I give Kastner, I should obviously have done so in terms of their basic emotional drive, nationalism. The illustrious example of Flaubert is perhaps more misleading than any other. Flaubert, for whom the value of art was supreme and who, indeed, placed the artist above the saint and the hero, created only characters whom he was able to regard with complete emotional detachment. He could even go so far as to write, quote, "I shall make them all wallow in the same mud, to be perfectly fair," end of quote. Such an attitude would have been utterly incomprehensible to Aeschylus or Corneille, to Hugo or Chateaubriand, or even Dostoevsky, yet it would have been approved, as indeed it is, by many authors with whom it would be futile to contrast them. Two essential notions of art are here involved. Nietzsche regarded Wagner as a mountebank insofar as he subordinated his genius to his characters. But one may wish the word art to mean an attempt to give men a consciousness of their own hidden greatness. It is not emotion that destroys a work of art, but the desire to demonstrate something. The value of such a work depends neither upon its emotion nor its detachment, but upon the blending of its content with the method of its expression. And if the work's value, justification, and chances of lasting reside in its quality, its content, regardless of the author's intention, alters the existing emotional scale. Without an inexorable necessity for such alteration, the work would doubtless not have come into being. The history of artistic sensibility in France for the past 50 years might be called the death agony of the brotherhood of man. Its real enemy is an unformulated individualism which existed sporadically throughout the 19th century, and which sprang less from the will to create a man whole than from a fanatical desire to be different. Artistic individualism is concerned above all in safeguarding the inner world, and is justified only when it is applied to the domain of feeling or of dreams. For in the realm of action, to take a concrete example, the, quote, giants, end of quote, of the Renaissance were always obliged to transform themselves into relic-bearing donkeys. And the figure of Caesar Borgia loses its radiance if one considers that his greatest effectiveness was due to the prestige of the church. Contempt for men is common among politicians, but not avowed. It was not only in Stendhal's time that concrete conditions of social life imposed hypocrisy on the pure individualist whenever he wished to act. The individual stands in opposition to society, but he is nourished by it. And it is far less important to know what differentiates him than what nourishes him. Like the genius, the individual is valuable for what there is within him. To refer again to the past, the Christian had as true an existence as the modern individual. And a soul is just as valuable as a differentiation. Every psychological life is an exchange, and the fundamental problem of the living individual is knowing upon what he intends to feed. In Kastner's opinion, as in that of some other communist intellectuals, communism restores to the individual all the creative potentialities of his nature. If he happens to be a subject of the Roman Empire, an early Christian, a soldier of the French Revolution, a Soviet worker, a man is an integral part of the society in which he lives. If, on the other hand, he is an Alexandrian or an 18th century French writer, he is separate from it. And unless he identifies himself with the social order which is struggling to be born, his essential expression cannot be heroic. There are, of course, other human attitudes. It is difficult to be a man, but it is not more difficult to become one by enriching one's fellowship with other men than by cultivating one's individual peculiarities. The former nourishes with at least as much force as the latter that which makes man human, which enables him to surpass himself, to create, invent, or realize himself. Andre Malraux.